process, which is what Long Island just completed,
Yeah.
18 months. So I wouldn't ask, I would offer this as our solution, and if they say no, then we know.
Okay. I think it's very, I think somewhere within, it's been a long time since I've read what I'm wrong. Somewhere within the body of it, it says, and we definitely need to do a full redo of the comprehensive plan. Of course, everybody knows that. So I'm hoping that that will, be enough magic to get us by. But I've seen that list, I know, it seems quaint and odd that there are people checking off boxes as whether plans have been done, although they're no longer required. So,
Well, I think, I would say they affect your eligibility for a number of grant programs, so they're not required, but they are still a functional, aspect of
Yes.
being eligible. So, you know, they're not required in terms of statute. They're effectively needed. And so I think honestly, keeping a low profile about that's why I think having a workshop with some type of community vetting input process separate from an actual,
Yep.
you know, hearing, at least gives it kind of, some credibility about community input. And then I do think as a community, we should really think about, you know, document at some point. What we have is a bunch of pieces in different places, and we should synthesize that. I think if we do it, we should hire somebody to do it.
I think that sounds like a really great idea. Another thing, the workshop might be a very good place to bring up the notion of when do we really go at this and redo it, and at least get that in the air and teed up. Thank you. The fifth item is section 406 of the zoning ordinance. Basically, that was the section that dealt with multiplexes, and really pretty much in recrafting that, I think I left pretty much all of it alone in terms of its slightly more restrictive nature in terms of open space requirements and frontage requirements and acreage requirements. But then also added in condominiums because they were floating out there in the ether under conversions, I think. And I thought they logically tied together and made basically all the only piece that was in about condominiums was that anyone engaging in developing a condominium or putting together the condominium has to follow state law. So very boilerplate. I don't think, you know, we might want to look at this another day in terms of, in particular for affordable housing purposes, and just for apartment purposes in general. I look at some of the more restrictive developments of it and think about those and see if they're overly restrictive. That'll be, I think, for the community to look at that time. Any questions on any of those so far? In terms of,
Not really a question, but a comment, and sort of more on a global comment, relating probably mostly to the floodplain management ordinance, maybe also the comprehensive plan. There hasn't been one of my concerns working with the climate action team is they're definitely thinking about ways to improve island resiliency to climate change. We saw the effects in January. And if we just keep going about our business the way we have been and don't make any changes, we're going to see continuing property damage and flooding. So I think at some point we have to bite the bullet and think about some of those. The floodplain maps, for example, are being issued finally in June of 24. And a lot of communities use those floodplain maps to incorporate some more limitations in terms of either demonstrating, either raising base flood elevations or moving further back from the shoreline areas to flooding. So I guess I know we have to make these changes in order to keep the floodplain management ordinance in place. But at some point in the near future, I think we really need to start thinking about how we're changing our ordinances so we're not, building in areas that are disadvantageous to everyone. And so I do think the floodplain management ordinance, there might be some simple things to do to incorporate a little bit more resiliency, but it would be hard without, it requires public input, and the timeline between or now, March into, I don't know if it could be accomplished in the time. But that's just something overall I wanted to add, as we think about rewriting these ordinances, and there's a lot of guidance out there, or, model ordinances that are already been prepared for other communities that we can utilize, so we don't have to come up with them on our own. But there are probably 4 different techniques to use with the floodplain management ordinance that could help to, and this is generally oriented towards new construction, not existing. And it's just to discourage people from building in flood-prone areas. So maybe this isn't the time, but I kind of feel like this is a direction we should start moving in. That includes building town roads, everything.
Or moving town roads. Yep.
Right. So that's just a global comment.
Great, thank you.
Got more, yes, sir?
Are you moving on to the next number? Go ahead.
Okay, you sure?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, the next thing I wanted to talk about, these are kind of the items that I think, well, there are 4 different items. One of them is ready to go. I would say the short-term rental ordinance and application fee. I think the board's knocked that around enough that it's probably ready to go. But I think it probably needs to, our thought was that it might need to be vetted more by the community. Like there might be a little more contention over, a new requirement to say register if you're a renter, and which is understandable. So we're thinking that perhaps that might be a better item to present the workshop, hearing, do some outreach, and get on be a warrant article in a special town meeting later in the year. I wouldn't be averse to putting it on right now, but I think it might just be a little bit more than we want to bite off for the moment.
Any thoughts from the board on that? I think that's what John's looking for. David?
So your intent is to bring this up at a later time, or do you want to discuss it now?
Obviously I'll take any comments that are out there, but yeah, I think I want to present it to the town and see if we can, firstly, if you guys want to do your ordinance, well, want to take it on and think it's important, but then also, I think it would be good to publicize it more and get more input. And
Full disclosure, we read out a part of our property for a while, up until 2010. And we haven't read it since, so, but I was curious, and I looked to see that the towns in Maine that have such an ordinance are Portland, Algonquin, Bar Harbor, and Rockland. And that's it. And I know that on Shebig, I'd say about 150 years ago, people started, what they call them, boarding houses and such. It's been around for a long time and it hasn't been a problem. And I'm concerned about how much more burden is it going to place on the town office. Right now, there are 11 total on the island that I can find on Bergone, BRG, or whatever it is. and Airbnb is only one, but anyway. I question the need for it, and I certainly question the need for, saddling the, town administration with, administering it.
Yeah, I, believe it or not, we actually talked about it on
Well, I imagine,
that. The concept was, we looked at the island and said, it is not a problem right at the moment.
Right.
And that's true. And what we did is we looked at other towns, not just our own coastal towns, but across the country, who are experiencing corporate purchases of properties, corporate rentals, non-resident owners renting to people. Neighborhoods changing on that basis, just on the basis of somewhat irresponsible renters. That is not clearly what happens here on the island that I know
right,
of. This would be very low fee based, we hope it would cost. It would require no more work, I think, really, than a dog license in terms of actually what you fill out and what you would bring to town hall. It would be voluntary compliance. Do you have insurance? Yes, good. Do you have a fire escape plan? Good. Do you have fire extinguisher? Good. Check those boxes. If there are complaints, at that point, it would become burdens. That's when complaints would probably go through, either through the CEO or through the TN. And then they would need to be investigated, and that could result in somebody losing their permit, for example. But it would have to be something like renting a 2-bedroom house out to 18 people, going way beyond what it should be. Parking in the street, 18 cars parked out. It would take something large to engender a complaint that would need to be followed up on. But probably the biggest thing it would add is a requirement that there be some phone number that either a town official or a neighbor could call and to say, hey, these people seem to be lost over here, and their power's out, or whatever. Just it would add that level of contact and responsibility that we may not need now, but who's to say we won't in a couple of years. So that was our thinking, is can I get ahead of the game as opposed to catching up later?
And one of the things we talked about was the impact of LD 2003 energy. LD 2003 and trying to, and that could have a substantial impact on the number of rental units available on any particular property, and given, and the fact is we talked about before, it's not limited by any sort of building cap. You can obviously have a lot of additional units. So the idea of this was not to do anything to stop that or do anything, but basically create a mechanism to understand what's actually happening on the island. And part of the reason for considering this ordinance to be kicked around was just so that the town could know how many units there were, how many places there are, and they can have potentially on, down the road on Aquifer and other pieces, services on the island, trash, whatever it is. And without that, without something to at least collect it, and that depending on how people view it, you can dial up or down the requirements, but basically, as it's written, it's just collecting things that are happening already on the island and things that are happening, attaching a fee to it because there's work that has to happen in the town to collect that. But it's really not, as Lisa chatted, not, we're trying to make it not particularly burdensome. Some common sense things, because we felt like it was long to do this and not add things like make sure you have a fire extinguisher. You don't have to have that, but a lot of this is the fact that there's the potential for significant changes to come quickly. On the heels of LD 2003, the town has no mechanism currently in place to know what's happening. So that was the, you know, currently you think it's property, not in terms of multiple units in it.
I would add a couple things. One, what's shown on Airbnb and VRBO is a small fraction of our total rentals. We've always had a lot of rentals on the island that are like those kind of rentals, some of which are owner occupied, most of which are not owner occupied. You know, back in the day, you looked at a list that was posted on the library website, or before websites, you emailed the library, and before that, you knew who to call to ask about rentals. And that's a part of the heritage of the island. But as the conversion, if you will, of houses from single family ownership to remote ownership by folks who are thinking one of the ways I can capture my tax revenue is by renting this place out 3 or 4 or 12 weeks out of the summer. That's having an impact on our available housing stock, both for purchase and rental. And that's part of the reason that Maine and Shebig have a problem with affordable housing. So I would say this is one more reason to begin gathering information and recording things so that we can wrap our arms around the problem, the opportunity, but the problem as it goes forward and as it has this dramatic potential to grow by way of ADUs. And secondly, I have received a complaint from a citizen about an Airbnb rental that had 16 people sleeping in a house that has 2 bedrooms. It was a party situation, and I suggested to that individual that they file a formal complaint with the code officer, and they chose not to do that. So I think Aaron's point is well taken, and John's, that it's good to try to get out in front of this in what I would consider to be a fairly minor way, but with the opportunity for a lot of public input, which I think is why John and his team at the planning board are suggesting, let's not take that to this town meeting, let's take it to the next town meeting after that. So, any other comments on that one?
Well, other than to say that a number of communities are adopting short-term rental ordinances in conjunction with the requirement.
Yeah.
So, you know, and I mean, what comes to mind is Georgetown, where they do have a serious challenge with some short-term rentals, and they have a limited groundwater resource, and, you know, people show up, they don't care, and it's caused a lot of problems. So I think this is really more of an inventory registration process, and that also will help us to track what the changes are over time. Like in 2 years, if we have twice as many, that's telling us something. And what that is a concern with LD 2003, the objective being to provide affordable housing. A lot of people are concerned that it's going to provide short-term rental housing and coastal areas for, you know, people who want to make some income.
We will say that the writers, LD 2003 thought about this. And at the very end of the law, it says the town is granted the right to regulate the use of these ADUs, especially in terms of short-term rentals, especially as they are presented on existing, I wish I could remember the line, existing platforms, publishing, advertising platforms. So they talk about Airbnb and Vertical and all that, but definitely, you know, probably even the newspaper is a platform, big media platform that would fall under that. So we have a right as a town to regulate these ADUs. But the question is, do we want to engage in the bureaucracy of doing it? It's bad. Yeah. Thanks. Thank you. The next two are both district regulations and performance standards. I'll lump those together because I think they go together. We're still focusing on reducing it from 2 districts to 1, basically making an island district, not island residential, island business. It seemed kind of redundant in a way, and that whatever you can do in one, you can do in another, as long as you get the proper board approval, pretty much. And we've looked at different, the uses and have, expanded the list of potential uses to include, other business opportunities. Which then, which have not been even, which have not been even on the list to be applied for in the past. Contractor storage yard being a great example. But to have uses like that in what basically is a residential community, pretty much across the island, hard to point at any one area and say, I don't care the business. You know, it's a mixed community in terms of residents and business. The idea of developing or enhancing the ones we have, objective performance standards that can be applied to decision-making about a particular proposal or a request for permission seems really important. So we're focusing on developing not just the uses and getting those listed, but also developing these performance standards to make sure that they cover all of the activities and protect the neighborhoods and the neighbors from untoward use of the property. We made a lot of headway on both these. We've got a ways to go. I think that again, now I'm getting a lot of discussion in the community, rightly so. So these I see as something we would most likely bring to a special town meeting later this year, perhaps even next year. But with some hearings and workshops in between.
Mark?
So, John, any recommended performance standards for a proposed new business, would that be separate from the old-fashioned conditions of approval?
I think essentially that's what they are. They're conditions for approval. It's like much like the rubric going through approving a pier. You know,
Yeah.
Does it block traffic? Does it harm navigation? Environment? Does it, and it would be all those basic things. What about runoff? What about signage? What about traffic, parking?
The hours of operation.
Hours of operation, noise,
Lights.
Air, particulate matter. And we're trying to come up with some objective standards, so it's not just not some squishy subjective approval process, but something that an applicant could say, I've addressed these noise issues. There will be no more than 50 decibels at the property line or something like that. Some more objective standards.
And you guys are working on this big specific zoning stuff right now. And it's likely that there'll be an opportunity for some lively public comments section.
Excellent. Yeah. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's the thought.
So those two you're envisioning probably not at a special town meeting, probably at the subsequent town meeting, if then.
Possibly at the special town meeting. Okay, later. It really depends on, we'll know better in the next month or so.
Okay. All right.
How the work on that progresses. And then the final one is the subdivision ordinance. And the thought has been to take that, wrap it into the zoning ordinance, reduce its volume and its nature in such that it's more should be oriented and less, honestly, less complement oriented. Probably move to subdivision per se as opposed to minor and major subdivisions. And again, and to wrap that into section 405, which already talks about cluster development versus traditional development, and trying to work in the concepts of open space subdivisions. And get that all into one very nice, neat, concise, somewhat briefer package. And that work has a ways to go. So that would, I'm guessing that is more likely to be a year from now.
Comments? Questions?
This is a very general question, if I may.
Sure, yeah.
Realizing that we haven't had the recommendations brought to town meeting to change zoning ordinances to should be specific, if you will, yet. If someone applies for a business opportunity right now in the existing business zone, does our planning board usually require a site review and a fee for that site review?
I don't know about a fee for site plan review. I mean, I assume there is one associated with the application.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's refundable if approved. I'm just asking the question.
Currently, I don't have them in front of me, but currently the districts are broken out into uses that are permitted, uses that are permitted as special exceptions, and require approval, and some in parentheses say also site plan review by the planning board. So it's a mixed bag,
Thank you.
but there are yes, there are those. But there are definitely businesses that either exist on the island or could exist on the island that are just plain don't fit in that category currently. And those are kind of, we'd like to make those categories available, but again,
Yeah.
with the strictures of good performance standards that would protect the neighborhood.
And a lot of public input into the process.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna answer my own questions. I'll be quick. If a business is approved with conditions of approval attached to that approval, is it the code enforcement officer's job to then make sure that those conditions of approval are followed up upon?
That's a very good question. I sat on a board not too many years ago where we put conditions on an enterprise. And after, whether it was 3 or 5 years, we'd have a full review of the, well, I left that board and I have no idea what happened to that. So I don't know, I don't have a good answer to that. We should have.
It seems like that would be the logical process.
It is, but there's, we haven't had.
And it should be, it seems like it should be the key CEO with a tickler file that pops up after 3 years and says, need to check on this business to see if they're adhering to what they agreed to.
Thanks.
And Carol, you had something?
Just, I mean, I think your differentiation between what to do now and what to do later makes sense. With the short-term rental ordinance, maybe, going not too long after the ADU ordinance, because I think they're related. I would recommend that anything that is going to town meeting this year be reviewed not only by an attorney, but by our code enforcement officer. Maybe in the reverse order, by the code enforcement officer, then the attorney, because the CEO has not been involved at all.
Peripherally so far, some email back and forth on some of these cases. With the issues that come up that have kind of, hey, what do you think is gonna happen with this, that kind of exchange. So yeah, there's been some of them.
So, and the way working with other communities, they usually have kind of lots of community outreach in the process. So, since we haven't really done that, my recommendation is for the 5 on the front page, that maybe we have a workshop where you cover those and where you make a presentation describing what you're doing and why. give people an opportunity, sort of an education outreach opportunity for people to ask questions, then have a public hearing, which is an official hearing, for people to offer comments and suggestions. So, and that I think will be a better process than just going directly to the hearing, but that's prior knowledge. Also might provide a better public input, you know, more productive input in a public hearing. So, and I think the board can help sort of with the communication, you know, why we're doing this, what's happening, you know, kind of send the information out to the town office. I think I'm comprehensive plan update, or I guess one thing that just popped into my mind on the zoning, I guess, it's really for a later time, but we have a growth management ordinance, a growth ordinance, and if we ditch the entire zoning ordinance, I'm sure where that leaves the growth zones that we identified in the comp plan and kind of how it affects that particular restriction that we leave that applying. So it's just something to think about. I think a lot of these things, in my experience, unfortunately, have kind of the unintended consequences side, and that's why getting them with attorneys, code enforcement officers, is worth it, because you might not realize it's gonna cause a problem.
We didn't identify any growth zones. We ended the comp plan by saying in the future, we should identify growth zones, but they never got officially.
I think there's some difference of opinion about that, because in order to have a growth ordinance, we had to, I mean, according to the state planning office, we identified growth zones, so we may not think we did, but when you look at their review of the plan, they feel we did, and it is on a map. So I think, I don't think tonight is night to talk about it, but I think our road ordinance might be sort of in jeopardy if we change the zone. And, because I don't know how we can justify the growth zone, maybe we still can, but that's just not the thing.
That seems to me, I think it's separate, but maybe not.
Right, I don't know.
Yeah, and as far as I'm concerned, we don't have growth zones because that meant to apply for the assistance grant, I would have had to send in 300 pounds of paper.
I don't know,
Just
it's state planning, I reviewed the approval and it's identified as, and it is on a map.
What map?
It's on the map, and then let's.
Yeah.
Say
It's yellow.
It's,
They're yellow,
well, we'll say that for another conversation.
Right.
but it.
So, and the other thing is, there is this small assistance grant through, EDC, you know, through the ADU people. Did you apply? Has anybody applied for that? You did. So $5,000 to $10,000 grant.
5 grand, 10 grand if you're in a.
Right, so did
You
you
get
get
that
that? That's for legal review? Did you apply for that?
Yes.
And you received it?
We haven't heard back.
We haven't heard back.
It just said it's been received, acknowledged. and-
And that's primarily for things like legal review.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, I'm hoping that will come pop right through, no problem. And we'll spend a whole bunch of it. Thank you for that.
Thank you
Anything else?
for the presentation and for all the work that you guys have been doing. It's wonderful.
Thank you very much.
All right.
And again, I apologize for taking some more weeks. And the night.
I don't say
I
that.
don't have to get ferry at 9:40, so it doesn't matter.
Okay. All right, item 24-027, to accept the resignation of a select board member and discuss the steps that will be taken until the June election and take any necessary action. Josh stepped down. He sent a letter in about a week and a half ago, an email stating that he would no longer be able to serve on the select board. So in terms of what to do, we have some options under ordinance that we can follow. The select board gets to choose which option to follow. They include holding a special election. They include the option in this time frame for the select board to appoint a 5th member. And it includes the option for us to operate with just 4 members, if I'm not mistaken. David?
First, before we get into that discussion, I would just like to offer a motion to thank Josh Daly for his service and accept his resignation from the board of selectmen.
Second by Carol. Is there discussion? All in favor? Thanks, David. So are there any suggestions from the board as to which path we might follow in terms of the missing one member of the board now? Carol?
I definitely don't think we want a special election, it's expensive, it has to be staff for a short period of time. I think if there was a volunteer who stepped forward and who would like to start to serve on the board for a few months, I think we would decide. So, that's where I would leave it, and otherwise we can operate on we don't have.
Okay. Any other thoughts or comments from the board? Mark?
Yeah, that's where I am. I don't think we need to hold a special election. I don't think we need to, no offense, overreact. If someone said he or she would like to step in and serve until June, I would be open to that discussion. We've got a lot going on right now, always with budget. We're trying to improve overall as a town operation, whether it's succeeding yet to be determined. We're dealing with a lot of planning for infrastructure.
Yep.
And it might be a lot for somebody to try and digest quickly, but maybe not.
Other thoughts? So is it the sense of the board to operate as is unless someone steps forward and sends a suggestion or a volunteer?
I guess the only question on that is, do we proactively advertise for volunteers, or is there a process for that? I mean, do we just see if somebody volunteers, or do we try to find some? Do we say, or, anybody who's interested apply? It's appointed by the board, so I don't know how actively we have to follow my question.
I think that's for you as a board to decide if you want to suggest that we blast it everywhere. As far as, putting it on Facebook, on town website, around the island, open position for select board for June. Or you just, operate as a board, and if somebody comes through, they come through, and then you take the next steps. I think that's up to you to decide.
David?
I agree with what Dave was saying. I think we don't publicize it, we may not get anybody, because maybe just the people in the room here at the moment ago, that the old thing exists, so we need to publicize it.
I would offer a slightly different take. I would say that given the factors that Mark mentioned, the challenges of coming up to speed with where we are right now relative to two big infrastructure projects, and especially relative to budget, I would think that the population of people who could easily jump into that probably already know that we have an opening and are probably listening right now, but another viewpoint. So is there a suggestion? Are you suggesting that we advertise?
Just saying, we do what we can.
Well, Vika gave us a choice.
Yes, I was saying that it's a choice for the board to make.
Yeah.
I don't have a suggestion.
I would go in that direction.
Carol?
I think if we are, in a position where we would entertain somebody applying, then we should advertise. I don't know that we have to blast it out or anything, but I think where you have the list of open positions on committees and stuff, we could add the select board, we could put it on the website and just say, I don't think it, think it can be low key, but obvious, because I don't think it's fair to assume that anybody who's interested is paying attention or whatever. That feels unfair. So I think throw it out there, but, make sure we understand, I guess and I think if somebody applies, we don't necessarily have to appoint them. That's the board's decision, correct?
Yes, it would come back to you as a discussion in executive session, and then if you choose to, where you would do it outside. The other thing to keep in mind is, Chris just reminded me, we are in the process, we were waiting until this meeting to officially, accept the resignation to then start advertising for seats, for nomination papers. So that will be out in the public, to advertise for the fact that, this current term will need to be filled for, 2 years, and then, like Mark's, seat as well, so possibly in the process of people, understanding and seeing that there are nomination papers out there. Anybody that's interested for those positions might be able to,
I guess-
decide that they might want to step in, a month or two earlier, in which case you would then make the decision.
Do you think it would be too confusing to sort of differentiate the short term? Is that what you're thinking, Chris?
I think that would be matter.
Yes. So maybe maybe that.
We have to start the process to advertise the proper way for the election that's gonna take place in June. With that advertising is the position, to fill Josh's seat.
Mitch, do you have any suggestions?
I do, because we conduct government in the fishbowl, as you can see from all angles, it might be appropriate to simply say on your website, anyone who has an interest in serving between now and June 30th should submit a simple letter of interest. It's subject to your review. You still make the decisions. You may get 1, you may get 20, you may not accept any of them. But you've at least allowed people to a period of time to respond and deal with it that way. And then, as you pointed out, Mr. Chairman, it's your decision to make as a group. With all the things that are on your plate, it'll take someone who's been following anyway. The other issue is statutorily required, and your town administrator has gone through that already for the July 1, June meeting.
And then David, you were gonna say
Yeah,
something?
just to be clear, I thought what people were suggesting was just letting people know that the opening exists, not necessarily advertising to fill it or applying on an interim manner. And I'm not so sure. I think the best way to do it really is to just get somebody on board in June, not to try to get somebody in on an interim basis, but we're talking about just a couple of months.
Okay. So we have a couple different threads going here.
Given, I guess, given what Chris and Topeka just said, I am concerned about sort of the potential confusion, and it's not like we have an overabundance of people, filling out nomination papers, so I think now that given that information, I think sticking with the, focusing on nominations for the next election would be my priority. And can you give us the rundown again about what seats we're trying to fill and what the terms are? Because we have these partial seats, right?
Yeah,
So Josh
would be a 2-year seat, and then Mark and David are both up
For 3 years.
For 3 years?
3-year seats. So
Okay,
there's,
so we need three
we need 3
people,
people.
so I think that's enough. Personally.
So what I'm hearing now, the sense of the board is that we stick with operating with 4 people through the end of this term, since we're so close. Okay, Mark, that's,
Yeah, that's my take, and I agree with Carol. There are 3 open seats,
June, yeah.
for the June election. That's a lot for a small community, especially on this board. I can't speak for David Hill. I do not intend to run again.
All right, I think we've covered that item then. Thank you. Any public comment on that item? Thanks. All right, item 24-028, to discuss the municipal waste handling agreement and recycling services agreement with Eco Maine and take any necessary actions. This is every 3-year, I believe, renewal of contracts, and there are some costs associated with it. Vika, can you lead us on that? Yes, go ahead.
Can we try to get Mitch off on a vote? Is it
Yes.
possible for somebody? We've got 6 minutes. Can somebody in the audience try fast? Would that be okay?
Looks like John's gonna take you, Mitch. Thank you. Yep. Okay. And on to Eco Maine. John, there are no police persons on the island, just so you know.
I won't go over it.
Okay.
Don't pull it, David. There you go.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
I'll be in touch, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
And Madam Administrator.
And Beacon?
Yeah, so these are standard contracts, to my knowledge, based on what's in here and what was in the previous one. There are no changes other than the increase in the costs that were provided to us, 4 weeks ago. And they get renewed every couple of years. My recommendation would be that the board go ahead and renew it for, the next 3 years, but then in that time frame, really take a better look at the overall operation to see whether these contracts are suited for the future.
There's 2 contracts, one for waste and one for recycling.
Correct.
Right? Yep, yep. Any comments from the board? Mark?
And I'm sorry that I don't remember, was the increase from EcoMaine for handling our recycling, or was it also municipal solid waste tipping fees?
The increase was for both.
Okay.
And so the waste is going from $86.51 to $102
Right.
per ton. And the recycling is going to 104.
From,
Oh, I'm sorry, it's going from 104 to 150.
so each one of them is double digits.
Yeah, and those increases are adjusted in the current budget projection for the next budget season.
But EcoMaine has been good to deal with overall.
I think they've been okay to deal with. I would prefer to have a stronger opinion from the transfer station attendant who's dealt with them. One of the things is with the transition, I hope that there is more communication with the new attendant to gauge those relationships a little better and whether they're working or there are improvements that could be made.
Thank you.
Carol?
Just so, and maybe for the benefit of people in the audience, so I understand, make sure I understand, maybe Jeff knows the answer. We pay $115 per ton for recyclables. And then we get some money back, is that right? And how has that worked out, like say in 2023? How does that pan out? Are we getting, what's the revenue that we end up with in the end?
I would have to look at the whole spreadsheet that we have, but it's every couple of months we receive like a couple $100 credit.
So, but I mean, we're making like, $1,500,000 a year on recyclables or $10,000, I just don't have.
I don't think it's that high. I can get you the exact numbers for next meeting. I don't have.
But is it your sense, I mean, there's a slight increase, $10 a ton or whatever. And it's hard to gauge how the B part on the revenue works, because I don't have, I can't tell. But is it your sense that's gonna continue in the same way? In other words, if we make, I don't know, $8,000 a year on recyclables, do you think that's what it's gonna be again? With this new contract?
I don't anticipate that what we receive for revenue is gonna change drastically.
Okay.
Because-
Maybe add that, so the training session you sent me to dealt with this subject. Right now, the packaging industry that gives us this money back doesn't think of Maine law as having any teeth to follow currently. So we get bare bones reimbursed. The current process that the DEP and EPA are working on will hopefully take effect 2027. And in 2027, that's when we will see more revenue coming back to the towns once the list of standardized recyclable materials are uniform, the triangles are uniform. So it's at the state level getting worked on, but it's still 3 years away-ish.
So the bottom line is we make a little bit of money, it's probably gonna stay about the same with this new contract, and then there might be some beneficial change in the future.
Correct.
You know,
And how do we do on sort of quality? You know, there's a whole section in here about if you have contaminated recyclables, how do we do?
We've definitely got dinged in the past about not being as efficient with recycling as we could. I think it's become less common recently. And I think that, you know, working with the attendants, making sure that they're out, they're present, and they have a visual on what's going where, is going to contribute towards people accidentally throwing things in the recycling that isn't allowed, that doesn't get, you know, doesn't negatively impact us. But it's happened in the past where, it hasn't happened since I've been in the position. Marjorie used to get phone calls about, you know, oh, there was a bag of dirty diapers in your recycling bin, well, things like that.
But there's a fee.
But there is a fee,
Right,
yes.
there's a charge if we'll
Yes.
continually screw up.
And I asked that question too, because that's, you know, are we gonna turn into the recycling police and watch somebody sort? Their response was, no, that's our job at Eco Maine to sort it. And once they come out with that standardized list of the golden recyclables that get the most reimbursement, there will still be a secondary list of not as favorable recyclables, but they're still recyclable. Their response was, we just don't want the garbage in there. Yep.
And that's kind of the stuff that we've gotten hit in the past is physical bags of trash that they've been.
Okay, got it.
one last question. Are there alternative suppliers out there? My impression is that there are two big trash hauling and recycling outfits in Maine, or is it just one?
Northern Maine has its own, but you're gonna pay a lot more in transportation fees.
So we only have this option at this point in time? Yeah, okay.
And then their fees are going up because the plants that the recyclables are all down south. So we're shipping all the stuff down south to get taken care of.
All right, thanks. Would entertain a motion to approve these contracts and empower the town administrator to sign them.
So,
Motion by David, is there a second? Second by Carol, discussion? All in favor? Unanimous? Thanks. Any comments from the public? Thank you. Next item, 24-029, to discuss solid waste operation and solid waste fees and take any necessary action. In the packet of the schedule of the fees. Any commentary from, looks like Vika's got some paper for
So
us.
it's just basically a list of fees from other islands and local communities, so you got something to compare what our fees are to local fees.
Wonderful, thank you.
He was doing his homework and I didn't even know it.
Interesting. I did go looking online yesterday just for fun and just went to Yarmouth, and I was kind of shocked at how much more we charge than they do, but then again, we're on an island. But you see that here, there are islands that are charging more than we do. And there are towns on the mainland that charge less than we do. Kind of makes sense.
What I looked at today was the areas where I had noticed that what we charge and what we pay. And so we have tires. The town gets charged $15, but the town charges only $5. So I think that's an area where if you want the consumer who's dumping to pay or spread it to the rest of the taxpayers. And then the same thing with the mattresses and the box springs. It's $45 for a twin, it's 50 for a queen or a king, whereas the charge is, only 20.
And is that 45 and 20 for mattresses and that 15 for tires, does that include the barging fee as well?
No, that just includes the per mattress cost.
Any others that jumped out at you when you went through this?
Nope, those were the only ones. I think that, I would really need to have a better dig, and I haven't really had time to do it, and talk to, Chuck, and include, Jeff on the conversation with things like, TVs and fluorescent lamps and things like that. Those only get shipped out at certain times of the year. I haven't dug back enough, to find, when the last time we sent a large amount of those things and what the cost per unit is.
All right, thanks. Any comments from the board? Carol? Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I think and I don't know, I think we should definitely be charging at least what we're paying. So no brainer, and I think we should update those that on the demo degree side, looking through the list here. There's a lot of variability, but we seem to be on the very low end. You know.
No.
Some have, well, so $80 a cubic yard is what we charge. Is that right?
Right.
Correct. Demo degree.
Well, like Long Island charges $39 for a resident, 93 for a commercial. Final Haven's way less than us, North Haven's less. Then they start charging per ton, which is different, but Yarmouth is only 30 cubic yard. So we're kind of in the high end of the middle.
Well, Peaks is 140, and is that correct? Or it was 350?
Well, they put
Per
140 a
ton.
ton.
Oh, per ton.
Yeah.
So, and then is it North Haven has a limit on the total amount?
Yes, after you go over that 1 cubic yard, then you have to pay more.
Nope.
So they charge you more if you're giving more.
Per visit, per year, per what?
I'd have to go back and.
Okay, all right, interesting.
And do we know if any of these communities require, you know, commercial operations to get their own dumpster? Do they all accept commercial?
Like Islesboro, you have to get your own dumpster. They don't do anything. But none of them require it, so to speak.
All right, David.
This is all very good information, it's been very difficult sitting here tonight to try to come up with a new fee schedule. And I was just wondering if we could basically charge, someone with that task to discuss further, whether it's me or.
Yeah.
Jeff.
Can I think the point of having this on the agenda, and correct me if I'm wrong, was to start the conversation and to get some direction from the board. I'm happy to sit down with Jeff and come up with a plan or dig further, but if I can receive some direction as far as, do you want us to focus on the construction? Do you want us to, you know, which avenue do you feel is going to be the most beneficial to put the energy in, and then bring back something with a little bit more of an adjustment on it for the board to decide, you know, whether they feel comfortable voting on it.
So the reason that we put this on the agenda was to inform our discussion on budget relative to revenues in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. And I was thinking about that too, that's a decision that's gonna have to be made relatively quickly, and how quickly we can turn this.
Right, so Carol, yep.
I would like to ask Mika and Jeff to come up with a proposed fee schedule, an updated fee schedule focusing primarily on you know, maybe everything but the construction demo degree. And then I think I'd also like them to consider, you know, right now we charge nothing for brush and wood. And I'm wondering if we should you know, I guess I would leave it open to their recommendations, but for example, should we be charging commercial wood disposal? Should there be a fee for that? You know, should we be differentiating between resident and commercial for sort of anything? Right now, we really don't, right?
Right now, you're talking about the brush dump?
Or anything, or anybody goes up there to get rid of trash, it doesn't matter whether you're a commercial operation or resident.
When you say
The only difference is if you're a commercial operator throwing away bag trash, you are assessed a fee in the compactable machines. If you're a resident, you are not.
were you talking about the brush dump when you said trash? Or were you
I'm
talking about
talking about everything. I'm talking about any disposal of waste material up at the transfer station. The only thing we differentiate is on the bag trash from a commercial to
Correct.
a residential. That's what I'm asking.
But we charge all these other fees for these other items here.
I was just getting clarity on, and I think that's an area for
Right.
future improvement.
Right, whether you're a resident dropping a tire off or a commercial, Chris Burgess dropping a tire off, same fee.
Right, and so I think for me, bumping the fees up to what you think is appropriate on this thing, but then at some point, I would like to have a discussion about commercial versus residential, but I don't think that's something we need to do in time for this budget.
And I would ask, as you put that schedule together, include some estimate of the margin cost for the major items as well. Like tires, for example, if it costs us $15 to dispose of them, but you estimate that it costs 75 cents per tire to get them off the island, whatever estimate that would be.
Well, so currently, tires, I guess in the past, they were stacked up and then you got a whole big dumpster and get rid of tires. Currently, they're listed to just go in compactable household containers. So they go off with your bags of kitty litter and leftover supper.
Is there no recycling opportunity for tires?
There is the household trash dumpsters, to my knowledge, Gail said you can put X amount in it. There's only so many that can go in it.
Tires.
Tires, yeah.
Well, that's not my question. If we collect them, is there a recycling opportunity for them?
Don't think so.
so.
That would be interesting to know as well. But just in general, if your estimate or your recommendation as to what we should charge included some recognition of the fact that we have to get the stuff off the island, whether it's in a dumpster or in a truck or whatever, that would be great. Mark?
I'm fine with Jeff and Beaker coming back with a short-term recommendation for some adjustment to the fees. But I think the bigger picture is probably the more important one moving forward, whether I'm still on the board when you have the discussion or not. And that is how the entire operation is working up there. What are we accepting for waste? How is it differentiated or not between household and commercial? How is it working? And is the volume even sustainable? Because the construction debris can be, those two dumpsters can be overwhelmed in a day.
I think that's going to show up in our discussion, a couple items down where we talk about needed workshops.
Thank you. All that.
Okay. So have we voted on the approval to sign the contract? Did we vote on that motion?
Yeah.
That was a previous agenda item.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
And we are done with waste fees because we've asked you guys to come back with some recommendations on major items. Okay, ideally at the next meeting if we can, but if it takes 2 meetings, that probably still fits within the budget schedule. Vika knows the budget schedule, so. Okay, moving on to 24-030 to discuss the current budget schedule. And I would say in light of the needed workshops and take any necessary action. So here is a printout of a calendar view of the next 3 months showing all the town activities. Vika and I talked about trying to get other major events within the town on here, but couldn't quite figure out how to do that. So we have talked about a range of workshops that we need. And do you have that spreadsheet available that listed all those workshops? But off the top of my head, it was the transfer station, Carol, there were a couple that you were in
On
favor.
the solid waste, we need one, and then I think we need one on the rec center school
Right,
MOU
right.
and something else.
Affordable housing relative to a suggestion that was made. That was on the list at one
That's
point.
not very-
No, it was not on my list. It was decided by the board to put that on our list of future agenda items when the citizen suggested it.
Shoreland issues.
Shoreland, was it coastal resilience? Was that something that you were at one point?
No, but now that I'm thinking of it, well, that's a whole, you're talking about something separate from a regular board meeting,
Workshops, yes,
but I mean,
public workshops.
that would be added on to a board meeting or to.
I think all of these, when they were suggested, all of these that we've written down so far would be worthy of a separate 2-hour meeting on a Saturday or something.
Maybe what that's referring to was the P's offers. Remember, they had offered to meet with us. I think that's still worthwhile, but I'm not sure it's urgent.
Okay, David?
Is affordable housing in this list?
This is not a list.
It's been requested a couple of,
No, I was trying to schedule these.
This list, this calendar is simply showing things that are already committed on our schedule.
right,
My sense was that there were a lot of things that we wanted to have workshops for.
right.
And there's also a lot of pressure to get to all the meetings that we have. That was the reason for printing this out. So my hope was we could pick a day for each one of these workshops and say that's when we want to have it. If we're going to have them in the next 3 months. Any workshops that we want to have in the next 3 months, put them on this calendar and make it official tonight. That was the hope.
Okay, and, okay, so I guess my question is, what do we have to put into this list that's not all here?
That's why I was asking Vika for the spreadsheet. I had a list of all the ones that I've been collecting on the agenda item list.
So in discussions in recent months.
Yep.
There have been discussions about how workshops are needed for specific items such as the discussion with CRC and the MOU.
Yeah.
Solid waste, the department as a whole.
Yep.
Affordable housing, shoreland issues. And so I think the point that Bob is trying to make is with the level of commitment that already exists in the next 3 months, what are the board's priorities and how do you want to incorporate some of these workshops that have been mentioned as wanted in with that schedule? And what do you want to stagger at what point between now and election, between now and town meeting, between now and, 3 years from now,
So there are 4 workshops. Carol?
So for me, the LG, CRC, and then I think it should potentially include the school because of the arrangement. So I think that's important to have that early, as soon as possible, because it affects the budget.
So can we come up with a date for that?
Well, I don't think we can close the data, but that's
It's a 3-way thing, but if we can propose a date, that would be great. So would you propose doing that in March? Is it
when
likely that?
when are we getting the information back from CRC?
I think Vika has asked for that information to come back to us before the budget meeting, at which will be in time to be in the packet for the budget meeting in which we're talking about that, which is March 20th. So we should be getting that information back from them on March 15th,
yes.
the revised budget information.
The questions that I had emailed you that went to the board, that this board wanted to ask before making a decision about the contribution to the rec center.
Oh, yeah.
I had followed up with, the CRC director, and asked if that information be presented to me to share with the board in time to be in the packet for the March 20th meeting, with the deadline for March 15th, so it can go in the packet.
And that's your expectation.
Yes.
And to some degree, the information we need to finalize the budget discussion of how much the board wants to budget to contribute to the rec center and kids place is related to the MOU discussion, and to some degree, it's a separate topic.
Right, I think it would be helpful to have the budget, what their proposal is before we have that MOU discussion.
Okay.
In case we want to make adjustments, it seems crazy to have it, so that,
Right.
I would say we could do it towards the end of March, or into April. I would say, we want to do it by the middle of April.
Okay, do we want to do it on a Saturday or do we want to do it on a weeknight?
Yes, for me, I prefer Saturday, but I'm probably in the minority. I mean.
Mark, what's
rest-
your preference?
I would not prefer.
David, what's your preference?
I'm free most days, but, it's up to the rest of you.
Beacon?
My husband would not be on Saturdays.
Right, so do a weeknight, and I don't, if I can't be there, I can't be there. It's not, it's just my work schedule is hard to know. Just schedule, see if I can be there.
Mark?
Could I ask a question?
Yeah.
I think it's related to so is it the expectation of this board and or the rec center / kids place that we're going to decide on their funding request before this workshop?
I think so, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think this workshop is to discuss the MOU, which is something that's been a long time in coming. Yeah, requested 3 years ago, that kind of thing. Carol?
I would sort of disagree. I mean, I think we'll receive the proposal on the 20th. I'm personally not willing to commit to funding until we have an agreement. I think that's,
Okay,
I
so
don't
we'll,
see it as a separate step.
we'll receive the information from them on the 15th for the meeting of the 20th, and then theoretically finalize or not their contribution from the town budget at that meeting on the 20th. However, we don't have to finalize the budget. Our final draft for review and approval is May 1st.
So I think having an MOU signed before we finalize the budget.
So,
And I do see them as being somewhat related because we're sort of deciding. I mean, frankly, we had an MOU that weren't meeting the requirements, it goes both ways, but on this one, I think it's important that we, equal all. So in terms of when we meet, I think, evening, it sounds like evenings are preferred, so I would say sometime after the 20th of March, but before the middle of April would be ideal.
what about Thursday evening, the 28th of March at 6 p.m.? As something for Beacon to then ask if a couple school board members can get there and the rec center can get.
Can you repeat the date? Oh, I was thinking
20th.
that April, I'm like, that's a Sunday.
March 28th,
March 28th.
6 p.m.
CRC.
CRC workshop, question mark, depending on their availability and that of a few school board members.
And I would, as a general comment, I kind of asked, came up earlier, that we not meet any earlier than 5:30 unless it's absolute emergency.
Right.
So that I don't be for.
Yeah, 6 p.m. Yeah. Okay, so that's that one. Transfer station, I would say is it's right up there in importance with the DEP one. So transfer station, do we want to go, I would assume out beyond this workshop, sometime into April? Does that make sense?
And so,
And what about Thursday, April 11th? And I'm just throwing that date out there as a potential because it's a week that we don't have. Well, we do have a meeting that week, joint meeting with the school board and the school committee is on Tuesday, the 9th of April. We have a select board meeting on the 17th of April. Do we want to go as far out as April 25th for the transfer station?
So I wanted to check with her because I think the finance committee had tentatively suggested the 25th for a public presentation, April 25th.
Saturday.
Oh, was it a Saturday? Okay. Just don't want to conflict with that.
Right, correct, yep.
All right, so, yeah.
So Thursday,
Thursday the 25th, Thursday the 25th,
Thursday, the 25th.
transfer station. Vika, does that work for you? Jeff, does that work for you?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
6 p.m.
6 p.m. Okay, that's second one. The DEP, and this would be a workshop on coastal issues, sea level rise. Carol, could you speak more to what you think that
It
would?
was, when they came in December, we asked if they would do a meeting, on many things coastal. And, I don't know how feasible that's gonna be in a post-storm situation. So I can find out. Did you ever hear back from Rob Wood? Did you contact him?
In terms of the response for Bennett's school visit, yes.
And where does that stand?
I was gonna share it under communication and then suggest an agenda item for next meeting.
Because I think that may play into when, if we think it's more urgent, so I guess.
Okay, so do we want to
I'm
hold
not,
off?
I guess, I would hold off on scheduling that until I have one condition.
Okay.
What I would say.
Okay. And then affordable housing, do we want to schedule anything on that at this point, or do we want to hold off on that
And
until?
where did that one come from? That was a public member.
There was a member of the public making a suggestion that the select board let the town know what they intend to do about the situation with affordable housing. It was
So
like
that has to be a workshop, not just a select board agenda item.
it could be. In that meeting, what I wrote down was that the sense of the board was that we needed a workshop on that. Mark.
I would question how ready or prepared we might be for a workshop on that subject, quite frankly.
Okay,
Well, I think that would be up to the people who want to talk to us about affordable housing. You're right, we don't have anything in front of us.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be negative against the subject matter. I'm just saying, you can say you want a workshop on most anything. But how prepared is the workshop and the discussion going to be? I think that's important.
No, I think it is important, and I think it's important if we do schedule it, that they can have something to present to us,
Right.
not the other way around.
well, just superficially, I think part of the purpose of a workshop would be discussing what ways could the town help further the availability of affordable housing on the island.
Right.
Off the top of my head, there are three ways. There are zoning ordinances. There is the town putting money into a budget to support affordable housing, whether it's ownership or rental or land acquisition. And then there's the town, this board proposing in the town meeting, the use of land for affordable housing, whether it's for rental or ownership. There may be other opportunities that would come up in a workshop. I think the purpose of a workshop would be to get a sense of where the public is on those issues. Does the public want town money to be allocated to that cause? Does the public want town land to be allocated to that cause? I'm not proposing that we do it soon or later or at all. I'm simply saying that at the time that it was brought up, what I wrote down was that the sense of the board was that we needed a workshop on it. Carol?
It doesn't seem feasible that it's gonna impact this current budget cycle. So personally, I would push it out a little bit.
Okay.
So I think we have enough to do to get a final budget with these other workshops that relate to.
Okay, so those two, DEP and affordable housing, we'll keep on the list of agenda items for the future. We'll bring it back up at some point after budget season.
Keeping in mind that the planning board may have a workshop and a public hearing. So we should consider attending those, so.
Absolutely. So we scheduled one and we have a tentative schedule for the second one, and that takes care of this agenda item. Unless anybody has any further comments? Comments from the public? Okay,
And on this schedule is the assumption that I'll start at 6 o'clock.
that's what we said.
I would, yeah, that's what I would think.
So schedule 2 meetings, basically.
Correct, yeah. 6 PM on the 28th as a tentative, subject to approval by the rec center and the school, and 6 PM on the 25th of April. All right, thanks. Other business, anything from the board? Vika? Anything
I
that,
have some communication.
okay, nothing under other business, so,
Well,
Okay.
one thing, let's see. Well, which section it comes under. We, the town applied for a grant under, infrastructure grants. We didn't receive it. I called the DOT, who was the agency, and their feedback, which was pretty general, they said they could get me more specific feedback. I asked for actually the scoring packages, and he didn't have those, but I think they may be available ultimately, but we applied for a $50,000 grant with a $15,000 match, and it was a very competitive grant application process. They had way more applications than they expected. Our grant rated low because it didn't have a significant fund. It had climate resiliency, but compared to other communities, it was on the lower end.
what was our grant app for?
It was to do phase A of the Weston Sampson
Okay,
project.
okay.
So I think the takeaway is they're gonna be funding, you know, we may have to kind of really package up things appropriately so that we are doing climate resiliency. And for example, that was primarily surface changes and parking changes and, you know, traffic changes. There's not a lot of elevation adaptation, and that made it score very well.
Good.
So that phase of the project may be hard to fund without something else.
But those grants were specifically aimed at climate resiliency?
Their DOT is basically said that's what they're gonna be looking for is, you know, adaptation strategy. So I think it's just something to keep in mind.
Okay.
And
David, you had your hand up?
No,
Oh, I'm sorry, okay.
just scratching my head.
Okay. Other communications, Vika?
So that was one of them. The other one was, the communication that you forwarded to me in terms of Casco Bay lines and an open position representing Shebig. Polly stepped down, and so Casco Bay, was asking the town to help and spread the word to see if, there was anybody that was interested or they knew, that could be interested, that could step in to fill a seat.
is that a big specific representative?
Yes, yeah, they run on 3-year terms, and so every 3 years, you know, or whenever the seats are up, we participate and help them in the election process, and so our big representative has chosen to step down
Midterm or at the end of a term?
midterm.
Midterm, okay. Would it be appropriate to post that on our committee's posting?
Yeah, I think it would be appropriate. I have a question. Is it a 3-year term starting for the new person, or would it be picking up the,
That I don't know.
okay,
I would assume that because it comes to a town vote, the same way that a board, select board or a school board, that it would follow the same guidelines in terms of if they step down early, then it would just finish off that term, but I don't know without asking them specifically.
Okay, so is the sense of the board that we can ask Vika to confirm that question and then put it on the listing of open committee assignments for the?
But is it somebody we would appoint to that position, or is there have to be?
No, but I think what I would suggest is instead of adding it to the town's appointed committees and avoid confusion, that we would just advertise whatever language they are looking for on our website or maybe the Shebig's Facebook page to kind of help spread it in the Shebig.
That works for me. That's okay with you guys? Is it appropriate to put a text out on that, or is that too much?
We don't have any policy or guidelines about what to do through text communication, so I can wish people happy birthday every time if you want me to.
Maybe,
Okay. Carol, you okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, other communications, Vika.
The other communication that I had was, it was a follow-up email to DEP that I sent last week, asking for a response to their visit, in December, to Bennett's Cove and other areas. We did receive a response, with, comments about, the visit. And so, I would recommend, putting it as an agenda item for next, meeting, with the communication, because I suspect that it would probably bring a discussion that I think is, appropriate for an agenda item.
Can we see the correspondence back and forth? I mean, normally it would be helpful to get copied on that email to Robert to begin with, on his response. In other words, it would be helpful to have the board in the loop on it. Is there a reason why you don't do that?
So with my day-to-day communications, I don't typically include the whole board. And so I think that would be one of those things where I would want some direction from the board to have a better understanding when the board is expected to be CC'd on all communications.
On that, I guess personally, on that, because there's a lot of critical, time-sensitive projects related to their visit and there's short-term appeals process and all kinds of things. I personally would like to be, I don't know, and I don't wanna upset the apple cart, but, I kind of would like to know what's going on more in real time.
Yeah, that's, and did I,
Maybe it's
I think I
just
CC'd you.
That's my mistake. The letter came not from Rob Wood, but the letter was reviewed by him. When I received the letter, I thought it went to the whole board because there's a long list of people, but it did not. It went to just me and Vika. So my
So
apologies.
what I did is the initial communication that, you guys were on, when George was in the office, I went back to that initial communication and hit reply all, which I think you were on that email and, just said, can we, can we get a follow-up on that? And then it was, I think reply all to that was this attachment.
Yeah, I didn't get that.
Which I then put on the,
Yeah,
but yeah, I'm happy to forward any of that.
and maybe it's just me, not the rest of the board, but I think because I had a lot of interactions with them directly myself, I just like to be.
Yeah, and I'm happy to CC the board on anything or everything. I just,
That one
the
is.
more direction I have from the board as far as what they want to be involved with, the better I know. And I mean, I will say, day to day, I'm kind of just there doing the things, so
No,
it's not for the lack of not wanting to. It's just that I'm trying to check off this
Yeah.
list.
So from a informal policy standpoint, that's one that I would have automatically forwarded to the whole board in Vika if it had just come to me, and I just didn't. I assumed that it was a reply all when I saw all those names up there.
And I think just generally, what's the front topic, legal stuff is good to copy the whole board. And that one, because I think it's got multiple entities, multiple projects.
Yeah, I think anything from the state in particular, I would emphasize the need to share that with the entire board. I think anything back and forth with the attorney. The one exception that I took earlier this week with the attorney was she and I were in a conversation, there were a few minor questions I wanted to ask her, and instead of replying and instead of including the entire board on the 5 minute, 3 times back and forth, I waited until the answer was there and then included the whole board on it. So, yeah.
And I guess maybe you're gonna say something about it, we had asked you to get, what did we do? We sent a letter to Chris Mail, did we get a response? And that came from the entire board, so I would assume the entire board would get a response.
That letter came from the TA and the chair.
I mean, that was from the board essentially.
And yeah, and so I believe I shared in communication that I've received a response in terms of I will follow up. Sorry, I thought that they had followed up.
So you didn't get a written response, it was.
It was just an email response, nothing written through.
Okay.
And I thought I had
Maybe you did.
forwarded that to you too.
His response was simply an email apologizing, saying, I thought my people followed up with you. I will follow up on it again.
But part of the request in that letter was, where are we at?
He's asking his people to have a meeting, and we haven't heard back from him.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, yeah, and I thought that went to everybody as well. Again,
That would be another one I think should put there.
yes.
Even though it's only a little.
Yep. Other correspondence items, Vika.
I can't think of anything. Those were the 3 that
Yeah.
I think I needed to let you know that you may not have been aware of. I can't think of anything else.
I think those were the 3 you had in the OneDrive. So, okay. Items to be placed on a future agenda. I've got what we were just talking about with
Approve the minutes.
oh, yes, sorry. Thank you.
What was
I skipped approving the minutes.
that? Oh,
Item 8 on the agenda to approve minutes from February 21 and February 28. David?
Yeah, I apologize, I found something that, should have brought earlier. On the February 21st agenda, minutes which have already been approved. We really should have mentioned about the tower agreement about the needed size of the generator and cost share involved with the research from the environment. So that would be revising the minutes that we've already posted to include that.
Is that February 21st?
That's February 21st, right?
Yeah, that's what we're moving on now.
Will you send me that change and I'll make the change?
He did.
I did.
Oh, but it's been
And
done.
you said you would take care of it.
Yeah, okay, just take care of it. It's been a
But
busy couple days.
it hasn't changed on the website yet.
The minutes haven't been
They're not up-
posted because
they're
you
not
haven't
up
approved
yet.
them.
I haven't posted them.
What you have, David, is from OneDrive, and it's a draft of the minutes that the current draft has the change in it that you made.
When I go on the website, the town website, I get the.
February 21 minutes, okay.
as a select board packet or as?
No, as the, as I just go to the town website here.
Can we talk about it after?
A different time, yeah.
Yeah, I'll talk about that.
Yeah, and that change is somewhat moot anyway, because the facilities committee has made a different decision. We're gonna use the existing generator.
Do we have a second for the minutes yet?
We don't have a motion for the minutes yet.
I'll second.
Okay,
I don't think we have a motion yet.
Well,
David.
Oh,
David
no,
raised his issue. Carol,
so he's in discussion.
sorry,
Discussion, we.
All right,
moved to approve by Carol, second by Mark. Discussion,
David doesn't.
any discussion? All in favor? Thank you, unanimous. Okay, moving on, items to be placed on a future agenda. I got the revised fees conversation with more information coming back from Vika and one of the transfer station attendees, and also the conversation regarding the communication from Sierra at the DEP. And that's all I had written
I
down.
missed the first, can you repeat that one, son?
The first one was the situation with the updated information and recommendations from the TA and Jeff regarding
Okay.
fees at the transfer station.
Yeah.
The second one is the DEP communication and any necessary action. That's all I've written down from tonight. We do have a list on OneDrive of future agenda items. It's sort of an ongoing list, and we pick from that for each meeting based on priority. As soon as we get past an issue with OneDrive, that'll be available to everybody to look at and see what's on that future agenda items list. Everybody on board, Carol?
So it looks like the next select board meeting is a budget meeting, but you did have the finance committee on there, right?
It is a 6 p.m., it's currently scheduled as a 6 p.m. regular meeting with a finance committee presentation and a 7 p.m. budget workshop. Third draft being CRC, kids place discussion, capital, and overall budget discussion. So that time frame from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m., which is already going to include a discussion with the finance committee, only has room for a few agenda items, but we'll time that out and figure it out.
So that's a regular meeting, not a budget meeting, that's how you're structured.
Yeah,
Correct.
Mark.
The purpose of my question about the rec center and their request for funding as it related to the proposed workshop, which is now what, the 28th?
That's correct.
The 28th of March, yes.
That's proposed.
Was that I think we need to be right up front with the rec center about when we intend to try to give them an answer on their request for funding. You know what I'm saying?
I hear what you're saying. I also hear what Carol is saying, which is that she wants to have the workshop before finalizing how much we're going to give them.
And not necessarily how much, but before finalizing the budget, I don't think that if we want to give them an amount on whatever it is, the 20th, I don't object to that, but I think they have to understand that it will be based on the conditions of the MOU.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
So that's what I'm trying to clarify. Because you said the 20th could include approval of funding moving forward with the budget process for the rec center.
Yep. That's all.
I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page.
Does my thinking make sense to you guys? In other words,
It's fine with me.
I'm fine coming up with a number and saying that's the
Yeah.
plan, but I'm also not gonna approve the budget with that
Yeah.
amount without a sign of.
Right. So nothing, as far as I understand the budget process, everything is a draft until we finalize it. So, Jackie,
Related to the DEP report. Will you be including that in the packet?
Yes. So I would say a report, it's a response as far as what their perspective was of the visit, so. It's a response, but yes, it will be in the packet.
all right. So we've taken care of items to be placed on a future agenda. I would entertain a motion to adjourn and then no, I'm sorry. I would entertain a motion to re-enter executive session to finish up our prior discussion.
I have a question because I don't know if we'll go to that.
Okay.
And we're looking at. So we received did you get it today, a contract from FB Environmental? You should have. And that's what I was trying to call you about today, because I wanted to try to get it approved at this meeting, but we just wait till the next meeting. So the climate action team went through a process, got our cues, selected a consultant. They gave us a scope of work, climate action team approved it, now we have a contract. And I'm just trying to get the contract signed. There's no mystery because there's a certain amount of money left in the grant, that's what they're gonna use. There's no town appropriated funds, it's just grant funds. But if this is the way to go through it,
I think we could handle that under the topic of other business,
Other business,
especially since
Yeah.
the town money is being expended.
tonight or.
Yeah, I think we can just kind of go back to other business and handle that.
Okay, I'm sorry, it dropped, I fell off my mind, but
That's
I
fine.
tried to contact Beacon to get her to.
I tried calling you back twice.
So,
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. I was, with Mitch when this came in, attached was a contract we drafted for Big Island target climate vulnerability assessment based on the discussion we had, Bill and Maya last with it, Bill and Maya, Let Forrest or I know if we have any questions about the contract services, addressed to me, for targeted climate vulnerability assessment, scope of work. You know, else.
And in full disclosure, the company that they selected, my daughter works for, so I have to introduce myself.
Okay, but the purpose is a professional overview of our climate assessment work, is that?
Yeah, it's a focused one, but the bottom line is grant funds we have. The committee went through, I think, a pretty good selection process. They looked at multiple applications and selected this.
Yeah, it was advertised on MMA, it was, they went through the process, number of people came, 4 different applications came in, this was selected, so I don't have any opposition with it unless the board wants to see the draft.
Yeah, if you want to see the contract.
Which I'm also happy to forward it to you too, so you can see it, but, yeah, as Carol said, if it's things that are going through. I support and don't disagree with what the board has done to bring it to this process, so I don't have any objection.
And you think we're okay voting on it since there's no expenditure of town monies?
If it's under other business, that this is an example of why that agenda item exists. I don't see that any members of the public would object or be discouraged from it.
Right.
If it was the example of the DEP communication, I think is a reasonable agenda item, because I think that will prevent from the public speaking, but with something like this, I don't see an issue with it.
This may be too generic for you, but I'll try. I'd like to move to authorize the town administrator to sign
Vulnerability assessment contract.
vulnerability assessment contract on behalf of the Climate Action Committee.
Is there a second? Second by David. Discussion? All in favor? 3 yes with 1 abstain, recuse. Okay.
Thank you, sorry.
No worries, no worries. Right, anything else? Okay, then I would entertain a motion to re-enter executive session.
Move to the other executive session.
We continue that. Okay. Thank you all for hanging in there with us.
Second.
Oh, second by Mark. And it's 8:51 PM. All in favor? Yes. Okay.
Here for morning.
What's that?
Yeah, I wasn't jumping the gun to put that up there, but I'll put it up there with the correction.
Thank you.
Oh.